Rise and Fall of Ninja Gaiden franchise. Hello and welcome, fellow marvelous gamers. We are back with another exciting video, and today we'll be checking out the legendary franchise of Ninja Gaiden, both the classic and the modern trilogy. The popular 1980s video game series Ninja Gaiden had its debut on the Nintendo Entertainment System before getting a mid-2000s remake for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Since the NES originals are infamously challenging, it's a real credit to the player's talent if they can complete the games without utilizing cheat codes to speed things up. So, without wasting any more time, let's start from the beginning.
You're not a murderer. You're not exactly a hero either. Guess that's what it means to be a ninja.
Rise of Ninja Gaiden. The protagonist of the Ninja Gaiden video game series by Tecmo is the ninja Ryu Hayabusa. In Japan, the television show was first referred to as Ninja Ryukenden or Ninja Raikenden, Legend of the Ninja Dragon Sword. In the North American Ninja Gaiden title, the term Gaiden means side tail in Japanese. In PAL territories, Shadow Warriors was the name of the original arcade game, the first two titles for the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Game Boy. Ninja Gaiden was forgotten until the middle of the 2000s after the NES and a SNES remake. Ryu never looked better than in the updated versions that debuted on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and to the delight of fans, the games weren't easier than before. The history of Ninja Gaiden appeared intact, and the series continued to be associated with frustratingly challenging adversaries. In 1995, the 8-bit trilogy was improved for the 16-bit Super NES. According to G4's X-Play, the series became well known on the 8-bit NES for its tight action platform gameplay, appealing soundtrack, and being the first console game to include cinematic sequences as the game's narrative. The developers of Dead or Alive, Team Ninja, introduced a brand new game in 2004 called Ninja Gaiden as a 3D action game for the Xbox. Sega further published two Ninja Gaiden titles for the Game Gear and Master System, the latter only being available in PAL areas. So let us take a look at the original trilogy first. Ninja Gaiden, 1988. So this is the OG right here. This game is well known for its novel use of cinematic cutscenes. It was one of the first NES games to have a complete movie-like scenario. The game's success resulted in 2 sequels and countless ports to other video game platforms. The story goes like this. The Dragon Ninja Clan's Ryu Hayabusa received a letter from his father informing him that he was heading for a battle with an unidentified warrior. If he didn't return, Ryu was to travel to America and look for Walter Smith. Ryu flies to America in observance of his father's final wish. He's taken hostage by a CIA operative named Irene Liu while there and handed a statue of a monstrous creature. The archaeologist Walter Smith, who Ryu eventually meets, informs him of the demon statues that he and Ryu's father had discovered and how they had to guard them. Ryu displays the statue that Irene had given him to Walter. The other figure was along with Ryu's father. The demon may be brought back to life by the 2 statues along with his body, which was kept in a secret temple. A masked assailant suddenly entered the cabin during a chat and takes Ryu's demon figurine. Ryu pursues the statue and brings it back, but when he returns, he discovers that Walter had been fatally injured and his statue had been taken. A little while later, 3 armed men arrest Ryu. The CIA director, Foster, addresses Ryu in the interrogation chamber where he has been brought. He tells Ryu that they've been keeping an eye on the Jakyo's activities. The Jakyo wanted to take possession of the statues so that he could free the demon that's imprisoned inside of them and bring about the end of the world. He gives Ryu the order to take down Jakyo. Ryu heads into the Brazilian rainforest and climbs the mountains to reach the Temple of Darkness. He's then tricked into turning over the demon statue by Jakyo's threats against Irene. Ryu fights and prevails against Molth on top of the East Tower, the opponent with whom Ryu's father had allegedly fought to the death. The existence of Ryu's father is made known by Molth. Ryu battles his way into the temple's royal room where he encounters Jakyo, who is using the demon's body to mind control Ryu's father. Ryu liberates his father, who gives his life to save his son from Jakyo. During the subsequent battle, Jakyo is murdered, but a solar eclipse has already awakened the demon. After an intense struggle, Ryu defeats the demon. The temple falls, and Irene receives a message from Foster directing her to assassinate Ryu and seize the demon sculpture. Ryu overhears this and swears vengeance on Foster. Ninja Gaiden is a side-scrolling platform game in which the player controls Ryu Hayabusa and directs him through 6 acts with a total of 20 levels. Ryu's physical strength is represented by a life meter which diminishes anytime an adversary or missile strikes him. A life is lost when the life meter is completely drained or if Ryu falls off the screen, and also if the timer expires. When all lives are lost, a game over screen appears. However, the player can resume the level where this occurred by continuing. The player faces a monster after each act. Bosses have life meters that are reduced by player hits. A boss is defeated when its health meter is completely drained. Each boss is one of the Malice 4 evil minions of the game's primary antagonist, Jack Yo. Barbarian, Bomberhead, Basukir, and their commander Bloody Moth make up the Malice 4. Players fight adversaries by thrusting at them with Ryu's Dragon Blade, a katana-like sword passed down from generation to generation in the Hayabusa clan. Throwing stars, windmill throwing stars, which slice through adversaries and return like boomerangs, a sequence of whirling fireballs known as the art of the fire wheel, and a mid-air slicing technique known as the jump and slash are among the many moves utilized against enemies. They may also utilize secondary weapons to drain Ryu's spiritual strength. They may not use secondary weapons when Ryu's spiritual strength meter is too low. Ryu's spiritual strength may be replenished by collecting red and blue spiritual strength materials located in lamps and lanterns. Other things discovered along the journey include invincible fire wheels that momentarily render Ryu immune to assaults, bonus point containers, potions that replenish 6 units of physical strength, hourglasses that freeze off foes and projectiles for 5 seconds, and 1-ups. This game received multiple awards and accolades from the leading gaming magazines and critics respectively. Ninja Gaiden 2: The Dark Sword of Chaos, 1990. The second game in the trilogy for the Nintendo Entertainment System is called Ninja Gaiden 2: The Dark Sword of Chaos. It's also referred to as Shadow Warrior 2 in the PAL zone, in the PAL zone, and Ninja Raikenden 2: Ankoku no Jashinken in Japan. The platformer gameplay of Ninja Gaiden 2 is similar to that of its predecessor with a few improvements. Ryu continues to use his several projectile strikes which drain ninja power. 1 year has passed after the first game's events when the plot starts. Ryu Hayabusa discovers that Irene Liu, Ryu's lover, has been abducted by the evil wizard Ashtar with the assistance of a mystery special forces operative by the name of Robert T.S. Ashtar is pursued by Ryu to his shrine. As her blood flows from the sword's blade, Ashtar stabs Irene in the back while laughing. Finally, his actual motives are made clear. His sword thrives on chaos and hatred, and he intends to use it to unlock the realm of chaos's entrances and let its demonic inhabitants loose. After a titanic struggle between Ryu and Ashtar, Ashtar loses. Ashtar casts the blade and Irene into the realm of chaos with his final breath. Ryu enters the realm after them. Ryu discovers Irene along with Jackie O in the realm, who was supposed to have perished in the last game. He carries the Sword of Chaos and intends to complete Ashtar's mission while also absorbing the energy that the opening of the gate would release in order to increase his might. Ryu enters the fray intending to stop this. After yet another thrilling battle, Ryu once more knocks Jackie O out. The Sword of Chaos completely wakes as Jackie O's blood meets its blade, and the power that floods into him causes Jackie O to resurrect while physically changing into a colossal monster. Ryu musters all the energy he has left to finally kill Jackie-O after Robert ostensibly gives his life to grant the hero more time. By pressing up or down on the control pad, Ryu may climb any wall in this episode. In the previous game, the only way to stick on a wall was to jump towards it, otherwise the player had to choose between jumping onto an opposing wall or employing a climbing method that entailed jumping away from the wall before grabbing it once again to go in any direction. The most innovative new feature in this game was the ability to make split clones, also known as phantom doubles or shadow clones, whereby picking up an object would cause an orange shadow version of Ryu to follow him around and fight at the same time as Ryu. These clones were impervious to harm, while missiles and opponents could pass directly through them. The clones would freeze whenever the player stopped moving, regardless of where they were, in the air, between foes, or any other location. The clones carried out the player's projectile or slash attacks during the stationary phase. At any given moment, up to 2 split clones might be deployed. Given Nintendo's history of censoring at the time, Ninja Gaiden 2 had a startling amount of blood and violence. These sequences included the vivid representation of Ashtar's blade covered in dripping blood, the bloody pool growing from Jackie-O, and the frequent usage of real guns. Still, Ninja Gaiden 2 was the most heavily censored of the trilogy's 3 games in the SNES compilation. Among these, the hexagram on Jackie-O's cloak was altered to appear to be nothing, and his pool of blood was changed from red to green. Although the story is not that great if you compare it with the first game, the levels were more challenging and complex. Ninja Gaiden 3: The Ancient Ship of Doom, 1991. This game, in contrast to the earlier releases, was never made available in Europe. In 2008, it was made available on the Virtual Console. However, this is not explicitly stated. The game takes place between the events of the first Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos. This was done to maintain continuity. The production team decided that it was too challenging to carry on the tale after Ninja Gaiden 2, so they chose to situate the plot before the events of the second game and center it around Foster, the secondary antagonist from the first game. The story follows Ryu Hayabusa and finds him caught up in a web of peril and deceit and struggles to defend his identity after he is accused of killing his fiancée and CIA agent Irene Liu. As Ryu travels to N3SH's facility, the last place where Irene was seen alive, he learns that the entire complex is overrun with horrifying bionodes, but Clancy proves to be a questionable ally, telling Ryu to go inside the Castle Rock fortress. He meets Clancy along the road, who would finally be able to answer all of his questions. Foster, the head of the CIA, is an old acquaintance Ryu encounters after battling through forests and caverns. When questioned about Irene's death, Foster first denies any participation before abandoning Ryu to deal with a doppelganger clone. Ryu is forced into a battle and defeated by the Bionoid clone, although he later learns that Irene was killed by this Bionoid when she discovered Foster's plans. According to Foster's instructions, the Bionoid spares Ryu's life, but Ryu keeps on regardless of this setback. Clancy and Foster apparently participated in biohazard plan experiments using the energy from a trans-dimensional gap formed when Ryu killed the demon and discovered inside the remains of Castle Rock Fortress. Foster developed superhuman bionoids with these energies, including Ryu's doppelganger. Ryu eventually reaches the remnants of Castle Rock Fortress, his final goal. He's there pushed into a second confrontation with his bionoid clone after entering the ruins just as Irene reappears. After escaping her near-death experience, she met up with US military personnel to plan an attack on Foster's stronghold. As a result of this development, Ryu battles and kills his bionoid clone, which is now in a changed condition. To Foster's amazement, Clancy intervenes to take control of the wreckage amid the turmoil. Foster is eviscerated by his trans-dimensional shift, and Clancy flees through the trans-dimensional split. Irene begs Ryu to follow, but Ryu pursues, leaving Irene behind. His identical twin greets Ryu with the trans-dimensional runes, who has been transformed into a super being from the point of death by the life force inside. After a short exchange, Ryu is transported to the bottom levels of the rune, where he must battle swarms of terrible monsters. Ryu is made aware of the truth about the runes when he once more comes face to face with Clancy and learns that it is actually a super-dimensional cruiser. Clancy seeks to restructure the globe and create a new global order with its immense power, beginning with the destruction of humanity. Ryu engages Clancy in one last battle before becoming a superhuman monster. Ryu triumphs with every new change, and the cruiser is crippled and destroyed after Clancy is killed. After being safely transferred back to regular dimensional space, Ryu and Irene face a new day. Ryu may now hang overhead from pipes or ivy in Ninja Gaiden 3. He can swing up on top of them or descend from them, and much as with walls, he can only strike adversaries while hanging with secondary weapons. As with all other goodies in the game, recovery medicine bottles are hidden inside crystal balls that Ryu must slice open, and these can be found scattered across the stages to restore Ryu's physical power partly. When Ryu's life meter is empty, he falls into a hole or the timer expires. The player loses a life. If players lose all their lives, it terminates the game, although they can resume play from the start of the act in which this happened. However, players in the US version of Ninja Gaiden 3 are only given a total of 5 continues before starting the game from scratch. Along with the standard ninja techniques, a brand new power, vacuum wave art, has been introduced to the toolbox. This technique simultaneously launches vacuum blades above and below Ryu. Players may gather scrolls of the spirit of the dragons to raise Ryu's maximum ninja power level and red and blue capsules to replenish his ninja strength. The Dragon Spirit Sword, a brand new weapon in Ninja Gaiden 3 that extends Ryu's sword reach, is another addition. Each act contains a boss that Ryu must beat by draining the boss's life meter to 0. The monster has a life meter of its own that drops if it's injured. The Bionoids are superhuman beings Foster produced and had in control in order to rule the planet. They each stand for the 4 elements of Earth: the Sand Eater, Wind, Night Diver, Fire, Mantis Warrior, and Water, the Great Kogane. They are the first 4 bosses in Ninja Gaiden 3. Ryu is prevented from accessing Castle Rock Fortress by employing these 4. They are thought to have been produced using technology, a combination of ninjutsu, life energy, and living creatures. Although the game received criticism for being more difficult for American audiences, that didn't stop it from becoming one of the most popular games of the year and of all time. That's the end of the classic trilogy, but let's shift our focus to the modern trilogy now. Ninja Gaiden 2004. The Ninja Gaiden series entered the third-person, three-dimensional action-adventure genre for the first time with Ninja Gaiden. The game, set in both Japan and the fictional nation of Vigour, follows the ninja Ryu Hayabusa as he battles swarms of foes in a variety of settings in an effort to reclaim the stolen Dark Dragon Blade. Through the downloadable content, 2 re-releases, Hurricane Packs 1 and 2, Ninja Gaiden Black for the Xbox in 2005, Ninja Gaiden Sigma for the PlayStation 3 in 2007, and Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus, the gameplay of Ninja Gaiden has steadily improved. Ninja Gaiden's narrative, which is primarily presented in cutscenes at the beginning and conclusion of each episode, takes place 2 years before the first Dead or Alive game. The player begins controlling Ryu in order to enter the Shadow Clan's ninja stronghold and speak with Murai, who also happens to be Ryu's uncle. Through a cut sequence, the female ninja Ayane informs the visitor of an attack upon the village of Hayabusa. As Ryu battles his way back to his hometown, he runs upon Doku, who has slain Kursha, the Hayabusa Shrine Maiden, with the Dark Dragon Blade. A cutscene showing Doku using the blade to kill Ryu marks the conclusion of the first section of the narrative. Off-screen, the Falcon brings Ryu back to life as the narrative progresses. Murai informs Ryu that the invading team was from the Vigour Empire as he gets ready for his mission at the Ninja Castle. Ryu sneaks on board a Zeppelin to get revenge on the Vigour Empire's rulers. Throughout the game, Ayane serves as a guide, telling the player what their next goal is and offering advice on how to handle certain circumstances. Ryu battles through Tyron's streets, slaying everybody who gets in his way. Most of the characters encountered are foes and the only interaction choice is combat. However, the swordsmith Muramasa offers a store where the player can buy and improve goods as well as give backstories, missions and suggestions. He instructs Ryu to find the Dragon Eye Jewel at the Hayabusa hamlet in order to enhance the dragon sword fully. Rachel, the Fiend Hunter, provides explanations and plays the role of the odd damsel in distress. In Ryu's rampage across Tyron, the player encounters several bosses. The 3 greater fiends are among the humanoid bosses, while most of them are enormous non-human fiends. In a fight that decimates the city, Ryu initially vanquishes Greater Fiend Alma, Doku, Lord of the Greater Fiends. Doku, Lord of the Greater Fiends, is ultimately responsible for the destiny of the 2 sisters, and he kidnaps Rachel in order to sacrifice her. Rachel is saved by Ryu, who also defeats Doku's spirit in a battle within a maze. But with his final breath, Doku curses Ryu with blood. To break the curse, Ryu fights his way through the palace. The final Greater Fiend, Marbus, who served as the Holy Vigour's Emperor Protector, is killed by him, and he then gains entry to the personal domain of the Emperor. For the player to defeat the Emperor, they must win consecutive boss battles. With the Emperor's passing, the realm begins to crumble and the player must guide Ryu up a succession of ledges to escape. In trying to flee, Ryu drops the recovered Dark Dragon Blade, which then falls to the Dark Disciple who has been following Ryu through the narrative. The Disciple takes the blade in his hand and reveals himself to be Murai. He claims to be the mastermind behind the elaborate plot to use souls gathered through Ryu's vengeance quest to revive the blade's evil power. During the final boss battle, Ryu defeats Murai, who has been empowered by dark energy. He breaks the Dark Dragon Blade with the True Dragon Sword in the last cutscene. After declaring it's finished, he transforms into a falcon and returns to the Hayabusa village. Kurcha's gravestone receives the Dragon's Eye once more from Ryu as he vanishes into the darkness. Most of the game's places are connected to one another continuously within the same game environment in which it's set. Even though the game world loads in phases, load times are often relatively brief. Tyron serves as a hub planet, a connecting point that connects other regions. Each chapter has links between new territories that are mainly linear and pass via exciting locations. These locations and pathways are filled with enemy encounters. Earth dragon statues that are dispersed across the area act as places where you can save your progress. In a third-person perspective, the player controls Ryu Hayabusa as he battles enemies and explores the 3D landscape. Ryu is unrestricted in his exploration, rushing through the streets, jumping and sprinting up and along walls, and hanging from pole to pole, except for a few circumstances required by the tale. Story mode, the default game mode in Ninja Gaiden, follows the pacing of a traditional action-adventure game. The protagonist begins the story as weak and can later be strengthened with additional goods or purchases to have a higher life bar, more potent weapons, and magical abilities. In this mode, the player's success is solely determined by their karma score, with Master Ninja being the highest rank and Ninja Dog being the lowest. Master Ninja Tournament was an additional gaming experience that let players publish their karma scores on Xbox Live after finishing the game. The Hurricane Packs, 2 sets of material from Team Ninja, were published. The first Hurricane Pack introduced 2 new outfits, 2 new adversaries, and the intercept method, a new attack. The second Hurricane Pack included several missions in which the player had to defeat waves of adversaries. A combination of Ninja Gaiden and the two Hurricane Packs, Ninja Gaiden Black, was released in 2005. The game employs the Hurricane Pack 1 tactic more frequently on hard setting and above, challenging players to find other strategies for defeating the enemies. Some of the brand new foes have attacks designed particularly to penalise you for using Flying Swallow against them. Game's standout extra feature is Mission Mode, which presents players with a variety of quick solo challenges. It also includes several additional in-game cut sequences. To prevent players from adopting an extremely defensive posture, turtling in Black, Team Ninja additionally boosted the enemy's aggressiveness and gave the majority of the extra attacks that could disregard or breach Ryu's protection. This game added 2 new weapons, the Lunar Staff and the enemy distracting smoke bombs. Then in 2007, Ninja Gaiden Sigma was released, which is the second remake of Ninja Gaiden and includes some of Black's features. The previous SNES and unlockable arcade games are gone, and there are fewer unlockable outfits. Sigma omitted most of the extra features from the first 2 versions of Ninja Gaiden, despite being advertised as the more comprehensive version. Additionally, the opportunity to see CG cutscenes outside of story mode and the introduction video describing the myth behind the Dark Dragon Blade and the Dragon Sword was also removed. Sigma's gameplay is quite similar to that of the original game, despite minor game-specific changes. There are many different weapons in the game for Ryu to use, having benefits and drawbacks that change how the player approaches battle. Dragon's Claw and Tiger's Fang, 2 dual-wielding swords, are a recent addition to Ryu's collection. It also gives Ryu access to Ninpo, which are mystical spells that let him do consequential damage to opponents while maybe dodging it himself. For the PlayStation Vita, Ninja Gaiden Sigma was re-released in 2012 as Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus. In contrast to earlier Xbox remakes, Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus has a simple setting dubbed Hero Mode that makes it more approachable for new players. Sigma's Plus frame rate was limited to 30 FPS instead of the other version's 60 FPS because it was launched on the PS Vita. The game also introduced new weapons and enhancements with new features for the PS Vita like gyroscope, first-person aiming, touchscreen controls, etc.
A lone warrior must restore honor to his clan. He seeks justice for the fallen.
Ninja Gaiden 2 2008. The Ninja Gaiden sequel, Ninja Gaiden 2, was made specifically for the Xbox 360 by Team Ninja and was released by Microsoft Game Studios. This is the first time that Team Ninja has created a game without having Tecmo publish it. It has a system of dismemberment and excessive blood that would eventually be entirely eliminated in the Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 release for the PlayStation 3. The game, which has a mature classification according to the ESRB but no USK rating, was disallowed to be released in Germany. A year after the previous game's events, Master Blacksmith Muramasa is starting a shop in Tokyo. Before the Black Spider Ninja Clan members assault the businessman and kidnap Ryu Hayabusa, CIA agent Sonya visits the scene and asks about her whereabouts. The agent then warns him that the Hayabusa village is under assault by Black Spider ninjas who are trying to steal the demon statue they are protecting and possessing. Enter the dragon, who cannot stop Sonya's kidnapping and rushes through Tokyo's towers to save the spy. When Ryu gets back home, he sees his father, Joe Hayabusa, and Genshin, the leader of the Black Spider Ninja Clan, fighting. The demon statue is taken by Elizabeth, the ruler of blood and the queen of greater fiends, and Joe begs his son to retrieve it at any cost. In search of Elizabeth and the demon statue are Ryu and Sonya, armed Black Spider ninjas, fiends, and 3 more greater fiends: Volf, the invincible ruler of storms, Alexi, the graceful ruler of lightning, and Zidonius, the malevolent ruler of flame, are encountered along the road. In order to bring back the long-dead archfiend Vazda, Elizabeth travels to South America, where Ryu follows her. There she presents the demon statue to Dagradai, the infernal high priest. Ryu beats Elizabeth in their combat, but Elizabeth declares her comeback. The archfiend will appear from Mount Fuji in Japan, according to an overseeing Genshin, and Ryu will perish there. Ryu warns Sonya not to follow him as he returns home. Ayane appears with the Eye of the Dragon, a gift from Joe Hayabusa, and Ryu fits the artifact onto his dragon sword, reconstructing the true dragon sword as he stares over Mount Fuji, which is ablaze with fire. When Ryu arrives at the crater's entrance on his way to the mountain's peak, Genshin is waiting for him, and the 2 ninjas engage in a life-or-death struggle. While Ryu dives onto Mount Fuji, Genshin stumbles. Zidonius, Volf, and Alexi are all alone, defeated by Ryu after he battles through swarms of fiends inside Mount Fuji. Ryu also manages to free and imprison Sonya. She is told by him to remain still and not to move. Genshin has been revived and changed into a fiend, who Ryu discovers in another chamber and kills. Genshin, who is fatally wounded, gives him the cursed blade of the Archfiend to employ before passing away without having a second thought about his alliance with the fiends. An enraged Elizabeth reprimands the Black Spider ninja for losing despite her prowess. Ryu kills her, arguing that the Overlord had more reasons to live than she would ever have. Dagger Day is almost finished with the Archfield's resurrection when Ryu approaches him after venturing deeper into the underworld and defeats him. The Archfiend is reborn when the Infernal High Priest, as a final resort, gives his life to Vazda. When Ryu kills the monster and leaves it for dead with Sonya at his side, the demon unintentionally receives some of his blood through an open wound, which revives it and allows it to rise to the peak of its actual form. In a dramatic struggle to determine the destiny of humanity, Ryu defeats the Archfiend during Mount Fuji's eruption. Reunited, Sonya and Ryu ascend the mountain together to witness the sunrise. The revised story is then continued in the original NES trilogy, which was discussed in the beginning. Most of the critical components of Ninja Gaiden, its predecessor, are carried over into Ninja Gaiden 2. Josh Keaton's spoken protagonist Ryu Hayabusa interacts with the environment from a third-person perspective. He starts the game with simple low-level skills and weaponry that may be improved as he advances by finding or purchasing stuff. Dashing along and jumping off of walls, swinging from one pole to another, and running through water are ways Ryu can interact with the game's surroundings. Ryu visits several different places including New York, Tokyo, the well-known Hayabusa village, the Aqua capital, and areas of non-human origin like the Northern Purgatory, Lifeblood Shrine, and Niflheim. The plot is told through in-game cutscenes, and just as in previous games, player progress may be saved by interacting with Earth Dragon statues. Additionally, they fully restore Ryu's health the first time they are used, but only once. Ryu's health regenerates after each battle, but only to a red gauge in his health bar that caps how much he may gain. As he is damaged in combat, the red gauge gets bigger. There are 4 difficulties available in Ninja Gaiden 2's story mode. The easier is Path of the Acolyte, followed by Path of the Warrior, Path of the Mentor, and Path of the Master Ninja. Ninja Gaiden 2's fighting system has improved from the original game. Scrolls are no longer necessary for moves like counterattack, flying swallow, guillotine throw, and Izuna drop because Ryu will always have them available to him. Since Ryu's movements and attacks recover better than most other characters' moves and attacks, players may respond to impending enemy strikes more quickly. Counterattacks also have a narrow window of opportunity, necessitating better timing. When an enemy strikes Ryu while he is blocking, he may also pull off a unique dodge that's helpful when the attacker slips his defense. Ryu may now dismember his foes by cutting off their limbs and ripping their bodies apart, thanks to a new mechanism that has been included. Depending on whether the enemy's arm or leg is removed, dismemberment will weaken or paralyze them, but it won't inevitably result in their death. The player must employ new, harsh obliteration techniques to dispatch his adversaries before they have the upper hand swiftly. Injured enemies become potentially deadlier since they're able to execute suicide measures, such as tying Ryu down and setting him on fire. In addition to his usual melee attacks, Ryu has the ability to absorb neighboring essence. The game heavily relies on the essence, which Ryu may spend to heal himself, blue, replenish his ki, red, or utilize as cash, yellow. When Ryu approaches these dead adversaries, colourful energy balls are discharged from their corpses and absorbed by his body. The game has received mixed but largely favourable reviews. A frame rate that fluctuates and a clunky camera that's worse than the previous Ninja Gaiden games are 2 of the most voiced criticisms. Ninja Gaiden 2's PlayStation 3 remake, Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, was published in 2009. The game is infamous for having substantially less gore and carnage than the first Ninja Gaiden 2 and for having deleted material despite adding new ones. Rachel, Ayane, and Momiji are 3 more playable characters in the game. Additionally, it has support for trophies, online co-op team mission mode, and additional massive bosses. The hero difficulty option in Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 Plus, like its predecessor Ninja Gaiden Sigma Plus, enables Ryu to block and dodge automatically and have access to endless ninpo while his health is low. Ninja Race and Turbo are 2 more new modes included in Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 Plus. In the Ninja Race mode, Ryu pursues a target while acquiring items to improve his speed and chaining victories to strengthen his strike. Players go quickly through the chapters in Turbo mode. This game was comparatively gorier.
It's not an easy thing to live in the darkness.
Ninja Gaiden 3, 2012. The story of this game is concise and straightforward. In the village of Hayabusa, the game begins. Ryu is informed of a terrorist assault by 2 government officials, Mizuki MacLeod and Ishigami, holding the British Prime Minister and his family hostage. Ryu makes his way to London. He finally arrives at the Prime Minister's mansion after battling through armies of adversaries. He meets the Prime Minister's killer, the Regent of the Mask. After a brief conflict, the Regent curses Ryu's arms. His forearms get penetrated by the Dragon Sword, causing excruciating pain and unsightly crimson growth. Ryu barely escapes with his life as the Regent leaves. A vehicle carries Ryu to the JSDF destroyer. He meets Kana, Mizuki's niece, and Cliff, who is Mizuki's brother-in-law. The regent sends them a terrifying message warning that he will end the world in 7 days. This game was created to be simpler than the previous games. The game's accessibility was a goal for the designers. 3 different game modes, Hero, Normal and Hard, were available. In Hero mode, the game primarily focuses on the narrative and offers the player auto guard and attack evasion help. Player must manually avoid and protect in the game's Normal mode, focusing more on gameplay. And for those seeking a challenge, a Hard option is available immediately. A small karma theory is included in the game. Fallen foes will beg for their lives as they pass away, but Ryu must pay the price for taking their lives. Along with dismemberment, the dragon statue save points have been removed. In their place, a falcon will sometimes swoop down upon Ryu's arms and save the game. There's no healing goods in the game. Muramasa's shop is also gone, and blades will evolve as the game goes on. Numerous game systems have been updated. Ryu may now attack adversaries with the sliding move known as Reverse Wind, and now a number of enemy kills is required to unlock the ultimate methods. In order to use an ultimate technique, Ryu's Dragon Sword, or if cursed, arms, will flame red from the essence of vanquished adversaries when a sufficient number of foes have been eliminated. Ninpo has also been updated. Under the HUD, a green barrier will now display in place of slots. Enemies must be vanquished to fill it. When the bar is full, Ryu must use a Ninpo move that will turn him into a dragon and let him eat foes, replenishing his health. The number of opponents consumed directly relates to the quantity of health recovered. According to the creators, Ninpo has been elevated to a new level in this game. The Kunai Climb feature, which is a brand new feature to this game, allows Ryu to climb barriers with his kunai and launch attacks from above. There has also been a new stealth mechanism introduced. Ryu can now sneak up on adversaries and deal them a single blow. In one of these Ninpo attacks, Ryu transforms into a giant dragon that breathes fire. However, instead of murdering adversaries, it forces them to fall onto their knees and beg for their lives. The game's morality is then incorporated as Ryu must decide whether to murder or save them. A more recent version of Ninja Gaiden 3 is available as Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. It was initially a Wii U exclusive, but was subsequently made available on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Except for a few minor interactive sequences and new chapters with Ayane as a playable character, Razor's Edge has the same story as Ninja Gaiden 3 does. The setting of this game is more varied and bloodier, and bosses even have health bars. Fall of Ninja Gaiden. In the early to mid-2000s, fans overwhelmingly praised the first 2 Ninja Gaiden video games. In addition to maintaining the frustrating degrees of difficulty, both games' fighting systems heavily borrowed from the wildly successful Devil May Cry series. Ninja Gaiden maintained its own personality despite this impact by including a sufficient number of Ryu-specific battle combinations. Remarkably well balanced and developed was Ninja Gaiden 2. Fans clamoured for further remakes following these 2 commercial successes, and in 2012 Tecmo released Ninja Gaiden 3, but the third installment in the series was absurdly awful. A player might press any button on the controller to defeat any of the game's many adversaries. Even if there are some highly challenging settings, the series followers who took pride in their ability to master combination and movesets felt humiliated by the combat simplification. Some gamers compared Ninja Gaiden 3 to God of War since it also had quick time events. The game relied on common gaming mechanisms of the time to get by and lacked any real heart in terms of inventiveness. As a result, the Ninja Gaiden game felt awful and seemed disconnected to the other 2 better remakes. Despite rumours and hazy clues regarding potential new Gaiden games, an actual sequel has been a long time coming for the franchise. Fans of the all-action ninja franchise may be disappointed by this, although there is some cause for optimism given the recent Master Collection. The future of Ninja Gaiden. During a panel at the G-Star conference held in Busan in November 2022, Fumihiko Yasuda, the president of Team Ninja, announced intentions to revive the inactive franchise. Yasuda refrained from providing specific information, but allegedly expressed his desire to share the news that would please the audience as soon as possible. If Yasuda's statement seemed unclear and uncertain, there is a reassuring development as the presentation displayed a distinct slide showing a snapshot of the franchise with the title, The Future of Team Ninja, Reboot of Popular Series. However, Team Ninja's creative director Tom Lee stated that the studio had no announcements regarding a new installment. Additionally, he mentioned they will offer a comprehensive update if and when the appropriate time arises. Marvelous verdict. In conclusion, for more than 3 decades, the Ninja Gaiden franchise has remained a treasured classic in the world of video games. For years, gamers have been drawn by its exhilarating, action-packed gameplay, extremely high difficulty, and compelling plot. Some have even referred to the beloved franchise as the forerunner of the Souls-like genre because of its reputation for being so difficult. That type of effect must account for something. Now, with the snapshot shared in the G-Star conference, perhaps the day isn't far away when we'll see the legendary Ryu Hayabusa make a comeback and bring Ninja Gaiden back to the forefront where it belongs. If you've enjoyed this video, click the like button below, comment the names of your favorite games below, and who knows, maybe we'll discuss them soon. See you in the next one.
It's over.